This is Al Stewart, Scottish-born singer-songwriter and folk rock musician who came to prominence in the 1960s and 1970s. Now, if you're looking for a musician that has released 16 studio albums, 4 live albums, 2 of the biggest hits of the 1970s, and one of the initial performers at the Glastonbury Festival of 1970, you came to the right place. This video will examine the life and music of Al Stewart. Welcome back to my channel. Alastair Ian Stewart, born 5th of September 1945, is a Scottish-born singer-songwriter and folk rock musician who rose to prominence as part of the British folk revival in the 1960s and 1970s. He developed a unique style of combining folk rock songs with tales of characters and events from history. Although born in Scotland, Stewart grew up in the town of Wilborn, Dorset, England, after moving there with his mother, Joan Underwood. His father, Alastair Stewart, who served as a flight lieutenant in the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve, had died in a plane crash during a March 11, 1945 training mission 6 months before Al was born. Stewart attended Wycliffe College, Gloucestershire, as a boarder. Of his musical beginnings, Stewart has said, "I grew up down the street from Robert Fripp. We used to take the bus together when he was 15, and I actually took 10 guitar lessons from him. He taught me all these jazz chords that I never used again in my life." Stewart learned songs by the Shadows, joined an instrumental group, and played village dances. When the Beatles broke in 1963, the band began incorporating vocals. As Stewart has said, around 1963 to 1965, I was playing in local beat groups in Bournemouth. In August of 1963, the Beatles performed in Bournemouth. Stewart and a friend concocted a scheme to get backstage and meet the group by posing as representatives of Rickenbacker guitars. The ruse worked, and they were ushered into the dressing room where they found the Beatles between performances. John Lennon chatted with Stewart and his friend and let Stewart play his black Rickenbacker 325 guitar. Stewart soon discovered the music of Bob Dylan. According to Stewart's later song, Post-World War II Blues, "I came up to London when I was 19 with a corduroy jacket and a head full of dreams." Having bought his 4th guitar from future Police guitarist Andy Summers, Stewart traded in his electric guitar for an acoustic guitar when he was offered a weekly slot at Bungie's Coffee House in London, Soho in 1965. From there, he went on to serve as Master of Ceremonies at the Les Cousins Folk Club on Greek Street, where he played alongside Cat Stevens, Van Morrison, and Paul Simon, with whom he shared a flat in Dello Street, Stepney, London. Stewart's first recording was on Jackson C. Frank's debut album, 1965's Jackson C. Frank, playing guitar on Yellow Walls. His first record was the single The Elf, which was released in 1966 on Decca Records and included guitar work from Jimmy Page, later of the Yardbirds and Led Zeppelin. Stewart and Page became friendly, with Stewart teaching Page open D tuning and Page teaching Stewart octaves and harmonics. Stewart had learned the Irish ballad Blackwater Side, and he showed Page how to play the arrangement of the song, which would eventually appear on the first Led Zeppelin album as Black Mountain Side, without crediting the original songwriter. Stewart signed with Columbia Records, for whom he released 6 albums, though the first 4 of these attracted relatively little commercial interest. Stewart's popularity and cult following grew steadily through albums that contained some of Stewart's most incisive and introspective songwriting. Stewart's debut album, Bedsitter Images, was released in 1967. A revised version appeared in 1970 as the first album, with a few tracks changed, and the album was reissued on CD in 2007 with all tracks from both versions. Love Chronicles from 1969 was notable for the 18-minute title track, an anguished autobiographical tale of sexual encounters. It was voted Folk Album of the Year by the UK music magazine Melody Maker and features Jimmy Page and Richard Thompson on guitar. His third album, Zero She Flies, followed in 1970 and included a number of shorter songs which ranged from acoustic ballads and instrumentals to songs that featured electric lead guitar. These first 3 albums were later released on the 2 CD set To Whom It May Concern, 1966 to 1970. In 1970, Stewart and fellow musician Ian A. Anderson headed to the small town of Pilton, Somerset. There, at Michael Evy's Worthy Farm, Stewart performed at the first ever Glastonbury festival to a field of 1,000 hippies who had paid just £1 each to be there. On the back of his growing success, Stewart released Orange in 1972. It was written after a tumultuous breakup with his girlfriend and muse, Mandy, and it was very much a transitional album combining songs in Stewart's confessional type with more intimations of the historical themes that he would increasingly adopt. The fifth release, Past, Present, Future, in 1973, was Stewart's first album to receive a proper release in the United States via Janus Records. It echoed a traditional historical storytelling style and contained the song Notre Dame, a long 9-minute and 43-second track in which Stewart tied into the rediscovery of the claimed seer's writings by referring to selected possible predictions about 20th century people and events. While it ran too long for mainstream radio airplay at the time, the song became a hit on many US FM and college radio stations which were flexible about runtime. Airplay helped the album to reach number 133 on the Billboard album charts in the US. Other songs on Past, Present, and Future, characterized by Stewart's historical genre, mentioned American presidents. Stewart followed Past, Present, and Future with Modern Times in 1975, in which the songs were lighter on historical references and more of a return to the theme of short stories set to music. Significantly though, it was the first of his albums to be produced by Alan Parsons. Modern Times produced Stewart's first hit single, Carol. The album reached number 30 in the US and received substantial airplay on album-oriented stations some 30 years before Bob Dylan would release an album of the same name. Stewart's contract with CBS Records expired at this point and he signed with RCA for the world outside of North America. His first two albums on RCA, Year of the Cat, released by Janus Records in the US, then reissued by Arista Records after Janus folded, and Time Passages, released in the US on Arista, set the style for his later work and have been his biggest selling recordings. Stewart told The Times, "When I finished Year of the Cat, I thought, if this isn't a hit, then I can't make a hit. We finally got the formula exactly right." Stewart had all of the music and orchestration written and completely recorded before he had a title for any of the songs. He mentioned in a Canadian radio interview that he had done this for 6 of his albums, and he often writes 4 different sets of lyrics for each song. Both albums reached the top 10 in the US, with Year of the Cat peaking at number 5 and Time Passages at number 10, and both albums produced hit singles in the US. Year of the Cat number 8 and On the Border, which was number 42. Time Passages hit number 7 and Song on the Radio hit number 29. Meanwhile, Year of the Cat became Stewart's first chart single in Britain, where it peaked at number 31. It was a huge success at London's Capital Radio, reaching number 2 on their Capital Countdown chart. The overwhelming success of these songs on the 2 albums, both of which received substantial radio airplay on classic rock, pop format radio stations, has perhaps later overshadowed the depth and range of Stewart's body of songwriting that came after. I hope you enjoyed this video on one of my favorite singer-songwriters of the 1970s with hits like Year of the Cat and Time Passages, Al Stewart. Now if you've got a musician or band you'd like featured on this YouTube channel, pop it in the comments section. I'll make another video. Thanks for dropping by. Rock on.